welcome everybody to another developer interview here on Game Wisdom for our Perceptive podcast series. I am Josh Placer, and joining me tonight, my guest is the designer behind the Falconeer, as well as the upcoming kind of like freeform or like 3D style city builder in a unusual sense of the Falconeer Chronicles Bulwark. And we're going to talk about that as well as any other design topics that pop up. So please welcome to the cast, Tomas Sala. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Reasonable. Yeah. A little next fest battered, but no, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we are recording this right literally in the midst of Next Fest 2023. I've been covering indie games over the past, what are we up to now? Like 4 days. I'm going to be doing every day, so I got a lot more games to cover. But it is great to have you on, and thanks again for agreeing to hop on and talk about your game. I'm always happy to talk with new developers here, and this is certainly going to be an interesting one. So, before we get to the game itself, for people watching this live or recorded, could you talk a little bit about who you are and what is your game dev background?
Oh, I'm Tomas Sala. Well, we had that. I'm a solo developer, so I work mostly by myself. I've got some support like a publisher, and I can't do music, so I have a musician I work with, Benedict Nichols. I got my start back in 2001. Started up a studio straight up out of art school in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, so in Europe. And proceeded to fail at making successful games for about 15 years. But did a lot of work for hire and work for other people. Ultimately, we did VR stuff for Sony in London, stuff like that. Had a little bit of a burnout, or quite a big burnout. Didn't enjoy working with big teams and ended up working by myself, which was sort of fun.
And your kind of like first game that you made like on your own was the Falconeer. So for people who missed that, what is that one about?
The Falconeer is an air combat game, sort of retro in the vein of like Crimson Skies. So it's not a hardcore sim in any means, but it is also a story-driven game. It's also an open world game, so you fly around on the back of a giant bird, taking on missions, doing dogfights, but also uncovering the story of this world called the Ursea, which is quite a bleak oceanic world, dealing with themes of conflict and strife and personal trauma and all that stuff indie gamers put in their games. That's the Falconeer itself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you are working, of course, on kind of the follow up, which is not really like same gameplay wise, but like really going in its own direction with Bulwark.
No, uh, and that's basically I get bored really easy. So I thought, well, for the next game, uh, what was the most fun thing about doing the Falcon? The Falconeer was a bit of a tortured project. It was my first solo project. It became an Xbox launch title, but there was huge pressure on it. COVID like so many fucked me up. So it was a bit of at the end it was uh, how do you call it? Weighted down in a sense. So quite an emotional ride. And after that, I wanted to do something a little bit lighter. And just sit around having discussions at the kitchen table. What was the most fun thing in the last 2-3 years? I was designing and building all the open world for the Falconeer, all the little towns and fortresses and all the architecture for that. That's just how do you call it? That is just downtime for me. That's just chilling out, making something pretty. And why not make a game about that? And that turned into Bulwark. Over the course of since, well, I guess a year and a half, 2 years.
Hmm. And how long did you spend developing the first Falconeer? Like, how long was that in development for?
Oh, that was. Uh, there are parts because when you're by yourself, you're just how do you call it? You're a bit of a hoarder. So there's bits of art and design in there that goes back 2013, so a decade. But the core design and it was 3-4 years, which I think was on the lengthy side. And sort of reusing some of that for Bulwark, the world and the creatures and stuff, is also an attempt not to have to spend 4 or 5 years on the same game, because that is by yourself quite a heavy load. You know, all that time without a delivery, it becomes so charged. It always charged, but and after a couple of years, just the fun goes away. So it's best to do it in 2-3 years at most. So I thought, well, I'll do Bulwark. I'll do some city building.
I mean, that's always a challenge when it comes to being like a solo dev or a very small indie team of just trying to get everything put together in the game. So with the like Falconeer itself, I'm just curious, like the original design, like how much did like the game like is like transform or did it change as you went through development of it?
Oh, I never put down anything. I haven't seen a game design doc in I'd say half a decade at least. So I don't put anything down. I just work like I'm prototyping, and then I polish up my prototypes and kill my darlings. And if something's not good, I'll destroy it or reuse it in something else. And then you collate and put it together. So what comes out in the end is quite different from what comes in. So that is a difficulty I have, is that it's the process is where the enjoyment is. It's where the richness is of the experience. So if you're in a good process, you're going at a good pace, you're also discarding a lot, and you're exploring new areas. So in game development, we have this very rigid way of doing our work. If you're in a big team, because you have to, all these disciplines need to work together. There's a deadline, there's funding, there's publishers. And everything puts into this project management software in Jira, or you're scrumming it or whatever, and everything gets time boxed into little, the smallest producible unit, which is an hour of programmer time basically, or a day. When you do that, you end up with these lists, and then you say, well, these 2 weeks, this sprint, we're doing this, and then next period we'll be doing that, and that after that we'll be doing that. That is such a rigid way of working. It's not a lot of fun, and B, it's very stress-inducing, and it's very inflexible. So if you find out halfway something isn't working, it's very hard to turn that ship. So that was one of the frustrations I had. So when I'm working, it's very hard to turn the ship, because if you're halfway there, killing your darlings is the hardest thing to do in any creative labor. Where you just get rid of the things you've just worked on for 6 months, but they aren't working, and it'll take more time to get them working than is realistic. So out the door it goes. But that is, and sometimes you're so married to stuff, and we all have our dealings with that. But in general, if you look at Bulwark even now, and I've done, I think 4 months or 3 months of evolving demo where people could just play it on Steam as I'm developing it, to what was the first time people saw it in January in Builderfest, I think. It's already quite a different mechanic, different feel to how it works. It's still got the same core ideas, but there's been so much feedback given that quite a lot has changed. Even though some people would agree not enough, but hey. So yeah, things change, and that keeps it enjoyable, but that also allows you to keep it fresh for yourself, and sort of find the core of the thing you're creating.
And before we talk a little bit more about the Bulwark, for people who are tuning in live or recorded, what is kind of like the elevator pitch for the game?
The elevator pitch is, it's a game that presents itself as an open world city builder, where you build these sprawling empires across different islands. There's a little bit of resource harvesting. There's a little bit of combat. But in essence, it's subverting you into. It's trying to subvert the game tropes and conventions around that genre into just being creative, like Bob Ross. So there's a lot of effort being put in how stuff builds. and you can build across any surface. And if you see on the screenshot, people build up and down sheer cliffs, mountain sides full of castles. It's about not being stuck to that idea from here's an iron mine. Let me drag it to this grid point. And even modern city builders add a nice 3D spice to it. Most of it's just very still planar in its controls, planar in its thoughts. There might be some subterranean level, and that'll be basically it, and some hills. In this, you can just go. And some people in it are literally building to the moon, trying to reach the skybox. And it's that in that kind of sense, it's a game about just making your own perfect fortress, your own fantasy fortress of solitude. And there's Townscaper and stuff which are huge inspirations, but those aren't living worlds. So that's what I like. That you're building something that is what a game can offer, which is in a living world, which has lore and history and people that can take the piss out of you, or get to be friends with you, or attack you. So that if you make a fortress, which is a lovely topic, we all want to make your home is your castle, but then also it needs to protect something, and it needs to be protected against something. So it needs this world around it. And because I like open world stuff, there'll be some exploration to unlock some new stuff. But in the end, everything puts you back into building. The solution to every problem in the game is building more stuff. And it gets fairly ridiculous. In the beginning, people go, "What the fuck is this?" But it looks nice, so they'll keep on playing. And then usually after 15 minutes or 20 minutes, it's a whole lot of "What the fuck is this?" And then they'll go click. And they discover, I can just build a wall here. Oh, look, I made my own first castle. And it looks really cool. And they go, oh, man, I want some wooden docks here. And suddenly they're no longer playing the game, but they're just literally Bob Rossing their own perfect little colony. And that's where I want people to be. I'm not interested in grind or progression or winning in that sense. There's no winning. The winning is so boring that and when you get stuck in your mechanical sort of problem solving mind, which is what games are great at. Here's a puzzle, let me solve it, and I'll feel great because I'm smart enough to solve, this game designer's puzzle or defeat the orcs or whatever you want. But it's also a challenge to overcome. If you're only in that mindset, you're not really being creative. Whereas the great moment in games is where you sort of leave that for a little bit. For me, it's the first time I played Dune 2 in 1994, whenever it came out. And you're not trying to defeat the Harkonnen. You're actually, look, I've got this great base, a few concrete slabs extra, and the turrets I'll put on this nice rocky ledge here, and I'll make this perfect little fortress. Oh, I won the level, and my fortress is gone. So it's basically for people that enjoy that want to be taken back to that place, and then only that place. I have no ambitions to make the greatest grand strategy or city builder. It is only about having that sensation.
And one thing that I found very interesting as you're describing it is that kind of level of like the procedural generation of your various settlements. That you draw a line, you can actually see the whole kind of colony build up, and then the people will move into like the sides of the roads.
Yeah.
How long did you spend on that part of the design in terms of the procedural generation nature?
That is all iterative. So the design, I did a tweet in January 2022 or something, just after the pandemic. So 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, in January. And I'd only spent 4 weeks on it, but I'm already doing the core mechanic of drawing out the towers and then a few houses spawn. That is initially. So how does that start? I wanted to have a tool that could build a castle. That is a simple question. I don't like grids or anything, very super structured. So I came up with this. I just had to sleep on it. I woke up and I go, okay, something like flowers. Flowers opening. So every tower can be a flower, and then we connect the flowers with walls. That is an interesting approach I'd not seen in game city builder mechanics. And it's just the perfect weird stepping stone for me to go do something. And I know it annoys the fuck out of people because you're completely leaving Instead of, oh, I played 200 fucking city builders. I'm the biggest city builder fan in the world. I played everything, analyzed what works, what players want. I just go to bed and I wake up. Oh, that's cool. And I don't give a shit about what players want. So that's why I do eventually. I do want people to like what I make. But the beginning is always just enjoy the inception. So how do you make it? Okay, well, you make some tower bits. You make a tower, and then that's easy. You press the mouse, tower appears. That's sort of simple. Just spawn it, plop. Then, okay, I'll make another tower, and I got this. I'll just draw out a line, and I'll rotate the camera around the one tower, and then draw it out. And wherever I click, the other tower comes. Now I need to make a wall between the two. I already had a nice rocky, I call it, test rock 01. A pyramidical giant rock. So how do I make a wall crawl up and down? And there's people that do wonderful math stuff, and Oscar does great stuff in Townscaper. It's like ridiculously elegant. I just made 20 different sized walls that connected together like little Legos. And then I calculated, I'll put one down, and if the next piece is higher, or if it's below the ground or above the ground, it'll be one going up or going down, until I hit the other tower. I did that, and then I added because I'm like a technical artist. I added a cool shader to it, and it suddenly tower's crawling over the landscape, and I go, fuck, this is satisfying. And that's cool. Okay, pull another tower, and then basically it's such a simple mechanic. You hook it up, 4 towers, 4 walls, you got a little castle. Fuck, I need some buildings inside of it. Okay, make 20 houses. Okay, make 20 houses, spawn them next to these wall pieces. And suddenly, okay, I have created a little city. Oh, wow. It's simple. And then literally next thing, okay, I want these balconies or like foundations to come out of the towers to give a little terra firma. So, okay, I'll add that. So if you click within within a small distance of the tower, it won't be a new tower. It'll be a little balcony foundation on which nicer houses can be. And I made that, and then, okay, this is it. This is there's tweet videos that went viral of me, in January where I'm just going, okay, here's a little landscape. I've put some rocks, and look, I'm building a bridge between there, and just walls in water is a bridge. And what do you do? Okay, a bridge needs arches. Okay, instead of a steady walk, let's make an arch. So arches. Oh, this is so cool. I go up the mountain, up the little pillar in the water. Oh, there's another arch there. And you go, okay, this is cool. Oh, okay, I need more floors of these towers because they're not going high enough. Okay, we need something that grows up. And I just having fun creating it, and not caring that much about how anybody would play it, just the sheer joy of building that, and then doing these fast forwarded videos. Look, I just making this in my game, and that went a little crazy, and that's how it goes. And then you just add stuff on top of it. Okay, I want to cross a little bit of a water, and instead of having a wall that goes through the water with small arches, if the distance is longer than, let's say, 60 meters, put in a big fucking arch, and that'll be even cooler. Look, you got a bridge over these pillars in the mountain, and I have another tower. And how about sticking a smaller tower into a bigger tower? And because it's all about chaos, my only task was to design all the individual pieces that if you stuck them together and started intersecting, doing all the shit you don't like in game design, you don't want pieces sticking together because the fish, and just make it look cool. So it's against. That is against a lot of rules when you're normally when you're making a game with a team and you have someone come up with the game design on a board, and then you need to translate that to a programmer. So you need to be very systematic. So we'll take this grid because everybody understands grid. In the grid, here is a tower. That means 4 pieces away from here is another tower. That means you can have 4 sections of wall. Okay, Peter, the 3D artist, can make 4 sections of wall. They're all going to be 10 by 10 by 10. And so all our measurements are going to be 10 by 10 by 10. So that means a gate is 20 by 10. Programmer guys. Yeah. Make everything 10 by 10 and 10 by 10 high. That I can do that. And then if you do only angles of 90 and 45 degrees, I can match it up. And we can make our little city builder. Even 45 degrees fucks that up, actually, mathematically. But that gives everybody a place to talk about and a format to be systematic. So the artist can work in the same system as the programmer. I don't have any of that. I don't need to explain to the programmer what to do. I'm just go, hey Thomas, what are we doing today? Making fucking video games. Nice. So it's literally I don't have the need for those systems. So what comes out is messy. And it just works, you know. A producer would go mental and say, this little stick of wall is sticking out through the other tower because you made it too long. And I go, okay, I'll just make the end of it look cool instead of fixing it, you know. So that okay, I'll put a little door on it so that if it sticks out, it looks like a balcony. And no producer would accept that. No, go fix it that it stops at the right distance. You know, you can't polish up every third of a mistake. Yet I do, because that's fun. You know, look, someone said, hey, this skyway, it's coming out of the rocks if I build it. I go, maybe occasionally I'll add a little frame that if you're lucky, it'll come out the rocks and the frame will appear near the rocks and will look like a tunnel. And it's and then someone posted on Discord, look, I did this and it looks like a tunnel. I go, yeah, ain't it cool? So it's in that sense the game is really weird for people, and I thought that'd be simple, and I tacked on some exploration, and I did it in the same control scheme as the building. All things seem super logical because I spend 18 hours a day in 3D environments. So for me, a little camera orbit, and people play it, they come back, Thomas, I've been playing city builders for 20 years. This made me rage quit in 4 minutes because it's so overwhelmingly different. It fucks up your muscle memory. You have to go, what's it? And it's because I'm a solo dev, but I make my shit look good. People expect everything is going to be explained and clarified and everything is. But I'm still one guy. I can't give you the holy tutorial. I'm not going to explain everything. I like that you're going to have to find out. Go back to the 90s and just experiment how this game works. And it drives people. So there's people that go gaga for it. I had someone come in and said, I have cerebral palsy. I'm stuck in the house 24 hours a day. I only play your demo. And that's, you know, so for some people, it magically clicks. And for other people, they go, this is so frustrated. I just wanted a nice colony sim with cooler graphics and a cool story. Yeah, I'm not going to give you that. Well, I'm going to give you that, but you're going to have to come to my world and let go of everything you've ever been taught about comfort gaming. Which for some people is fun, but I find hilarious. So, yeah.
Yeah, and definitely a lot there. I think one thing that I found interesting as you were talking about it is I guess like trying to like square that sort of for someone who's used to a traditional city builder. As you were saying a few minutes ago, like the act of you build it and then it's over. Like, level done, we wipe that slate clean, you never see that particular section again.
Yeah.
And I think it's like interesting with the Bulwark about just like giving that sense of, it's like personality to what you're building. Because that was one of the things I was finding very interesting when I was trying out the demo last night. You know, like you can just place down a bunch of random lines, random towers, and suddenly you have this like giant like island town all set up for your tower. And I guess for like, as you were saying earlier, you didn't want this to be like a traditional city build. You didn't want to be very like min-max, that kind of design. And how has it been, I guess, like with people like balancing, like you want to give, I know this is something that we were talking about before, you want to give players like basically like a sandbox. You want to like have like them give like free reign to build whatever you want. But then there's people who want kind of like, I guess, like the quote unquote game. They want like, what are my rules? What am I trying to do in this space?
Well, yeah, so it's because it's difficult because I have to provide some of that. Otherwise, people will hate on the game or they won't buy it. It's not. I'm not there to frustrate anybody. So I understand that. I'm a game guy. I'm not an idiot. But so there's, but I don't like direct guidance myself. It drives me up the wall. You know, you get a Lego box and you look how, you know, this is how you make it. That's, I don't know, that's boring. So you have, so there's I just spent 5 months redoing the tutorial over and over again because I, as a designer, don't understand that. So I have to be taught by gamers, by QA, by the producer at the publisher. Okay, we need to explain this. Why? They're gonna click. But people they spend a game and they open up a game which is a virtual toy that doesn't hurt you, it doesn't sap you, and then they get afraid of doing it wrong because they've been taught in games that every choice matters. So they come back, yeah, I never clicked anywhere, I never built anything because every choice matters. I was afraid of doing it wrong, that it had consequences. You didn't explain me what are the consequences. There's no fucking consequences. So that is a different design language. I don't know. There's part of me that spends a lot of time explaining it, even put myself in the game, but also making it so attractive that you'll start doing it. That the first time you build something, I want to do that again. I want to do that. So no, it's so that's intense. Every approach you have has a downside. My downside is that I continuously must accept that for some people this isn't what a game is supposed to be, and I had the same problem with the Falconeer. I present it as a cool fucking third-person adventure, but it's actually a vintage style air combat game of the 90s with this deep story and emotional hooks that only comes in after you play 2 hours, where most people just leave after 5 minutes and doesn't start engaging them. So that's things are, if you want to do something that's interesting, you got to accept some loss in that. But you also, I think with the Bulwark, it isn't that bad because Discord and Steam and Twitter gets hopefully TikTok at some point. People just make stuff and share it and go, I don't know what you care about this game, but look at the crazy shit you can do. And I will dare you to find a city builder that has more interesting screenshots of stuff people have built that looks more unique or more wow or more out there, because people are literally, like I said, building to the moon or just finding every place on the map. It's a 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer map and you can build anywhere. So in itself, it's I want it to be the reward for people to go, okay, that they know when you play a game by me, okay, put your assumptions aside. It's going to be slightly weird, but it's also going to be as original a game as you'll ever find. As freely made as you'll find, as unrestricted as you'll ever find in any game. And that is sort of the pact I want to make with gamers. Instead of give me some money and I'll entertain you for 10 hours, and after 10 hours you forget what you ever did. So it's a different approach. It's got upsides and downsides.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, like, it's that challenge of, I want the player to do cool stuff, but at the same time, there's always going to be that person who's like, well, what's the downside? How am I going to min-max this? What is the win state? And, like, city builders are very interesting in that respect, because we've seen this, like, the spectrum of the genre the past 20 years. There are city builders like the Impressions era, Pharaoh, and so on, where every map is its own self-contained puzzle. Build 20 houses, make sure 15 are level 3, you win. And then we have kind of like the more like SimCity, Sim style, where, okay, build whatever you want, and it looks cool, yay, you can stop whenever you want, kind of thing. And there are people who love and hate either style of it. It's a very weird economy when it comes to the city builders.
And there's a few very interesting archetypes of gamers there, which I hadn't realized. My initial assumption is city builders are going to be slightly more intellectual people. Less if we're going to not be nuanced. So they'll be up for experimental stuff. No. There's an entire section that just wants what they want, what they already know, which is lovely. I have that. I have my own comfort gaming stuff that I don't ever want. Games you play that you've been playing for 15 years. So I do understand that, but it's not what I'm offering. And it's nice that we now have the chill building genre. Now, I'm certainly somewhere it gets relaxing after a while, but you have to suffer through unlearning some old habits. And having to figure out how the game works, but it's I don't know. the placement within the genre isn't always the most interesting thing, because it's the same way. I don't play a lot of these games by the fact that it influences you too much if you do. If you really start, becoming an expert in city builders, the amount of knowledge also becomes a prison where this is the best way it did it. This game that did tile placing on a semi 3D spline road system the best. You gotta do it like City Skylines because it's amazing. Those things become a creative prison in a way. If you're so internalized in what you're doing that this is how it did. And if you don't have that, you become this perfect fool, which a lot of creatives talk about. The perfect beginner, because you're not limited by the weight of expertise, and you'll start making mistakes because that's part of being a perfect beginner. But the trick is you are opening new doors, which is the entire fun of it.
And we've seen cases from many developers, like as their first game, they take on either a very challenging or very high level genre, and they do something very different because they're not thinking about what is considered, the true mechanics or how this game needs to be, and it can lead to some very interesting roads.
Yeah, it's what the word flawed masterpiece applies to. Is that something that's great because it's original, but it is also difficult because it's treading the road for the first time. So if you pick up, I played Age of Wonders, coincidentally, which are friends of mine, and it's a highly polished game. They took all the lessons of, I guess, nearly 1996. We were talking about it, 25 years. 28 years of game development knowledge, experience, feedback poured in that fourth, outing. That is a highly polished game, but you basically have to know how that genre, how their previous game worked to play it, because they don't assume you're going to be coming in blind. They've already paved the road. And it's very hard to sort of, how do you move away from that, because you're going to get beat by your fans because, you didn't do and stuff. So it's for to each his own. I find being the perfect beginner a lot more interesting than being the polished mastermind that figured out how to do a genre. I will never figure out how to do a genre. I will never, because I'll be doing something else. And that is... it's just a different approach. I think it's an approach that's not always appreciated enough in our industry, because the money, of course, is, we all know, you iterate until you find the sweet spot and you make it better and sequelize it, add DLC bundles, and do it for as long as you can, up to the point you have entire teams, and we are calling it games as a server, as a service. It is, that is... Yeah, that's well, you all have opinions about that, but that has its own downside. And it's not the place where you'll find small developers doing interesting interesting things as well.
All right. So back to my question, or back to what I was saying, with something like Age of Wonder, and while as we're saying, high level strategy and city building games, part of the challenges that they have is that level of onboarding. That they become kind of so entrenched with their fan base that it becomes very hard to remove or streamline something that people view as, being, this is a required part of that genre.
Well, it's a convention. People said that, this is unintuitive. But, in gaming, nothing is unintuitive. We've taught you that.
Yep.
Moving your hand, moving this thing to the left and the right and clicking and getting the sensation you're a soldier running around the level is weirdly not intuitive. The first time it's something we've been doing so long. We know it works and it's effective, sure. But with the conventions make it intuitive, because we've been taught to expect certain things, and when the reality matches our expectations, we find something intuitive. But the missing part of that is expectations. So in when something goes too far from your expectation, it doesn't explain it and you don't have the built-in intuition to look for it, it is not intuitive. So when you build up something like Age of Wonders, you have so many conventions in place over so much time that intuitive means following the path you've laid down. So I don't need to think about it. There must be a tech tree. There must be a magic tree. There must be unit production. There must be boats somehow. There's all this. There must be an upkeep. These things are so expected that then everything starts to make sense. Okay, I'll go destroy some of the enemy's cities, so his upkeep comes higher. He can't have these mega air armies, and then I can defeat them. Logic. I came up with that. Intuitive. I made it happen. But it's actually the game has prepared you just to have those thoughts, because it's gonna reward you for having those expectations, and those expectations will be fulfilled. So when you make a game that doesn't fulfill your expectations or even tries to subvert them, it is immediately unintuitive by its nature. So interesting enough, the more entrenched you get as a studio, the bigger your teams have to be. Because if you look at Age of Wonders, every screen is beautifully polished. Every animation, the tech art in that game is insane. The characters are polished. The character effects, the magic spells. You go up. There's this civilization tech tree. Everything sparkles and animates. So they've made it's just to make it feel fresh again. You got to polish that shit up. So that you need hundreds of people to make, the more you do, the more we expect the next time to be more polished, more refined. We're not going to always play Starfield, so it's got to be more refined. It's got to be less buggy, and we can want, bigger tech trees, but we also want more environmental storytelling. We just want more of everything, more polished, and we want less of the things we don't like. So our expectation of what Starfield is are completely need to be fulfilled. And our expectations, I already know what to expect. I've seen the video. I can basically play the game already in my mind. I'm making a spaceship, then I go to an instance 3D dungeon to do some cheating, then I'm landing an animation, then I'm doing a bit of Skyrim, coming back, upgrading my spaceship, maybe making a base, talking to some people, going to the dungeon, repeat. And I love it. And all it has to do is be more polished and more intuitive than the previous game. Intuitive meaning exactly that, sound like the previous games, but just slicker and faster and more quicker to the reward. And that is the AAA pathway, basically. Yeah. So I am at the other side of that, and that's the only place I can be.
Yep. And on the topic of kind of onboarding and trying to get someone new to play this game, that's always that challenge when we talk about unique games. As you said, the advantage of games that are kind of established or they're kind of genre fixtures is that going into it how it works. How a platformer is going to play if you've touched a Mario game in the last 30 years. How StarCraft works, how Fortnite, any of those games. But the challenge that I think a lot of indie developers have, especially again when you're coming up from a very unique aspect, is how do you teach someone something when they are starting at zero in terms of understanding?
Teach them is usually less hard, because you can teach them by making it nice. Once you make something not nice in gaming, people will drop off. They will just stop moving their finger and stop clicking. It's very difficult medium to work in, because you're in a store listening to music. You can't turn your ears off. The moment I stop playing, I stop. It becomes a dead thing. So so you have to tempt people and seduce them all the time to get on board. I think there are masters, true game masters that can do that. Can do something original, wrap it in something existing, and take you along for a ride, and then subvert your expectations. There are people that do that again and again and again. I am not one of those people. That's why I'm not that's why I'm not I don't have a studio or the ability to do that. So I am super honest and realistic about that. I can get I can get fans and I can get by, and but I can't make the universal game. And much of our
Mhm.
industry is based on that idea that, oh, you got to play this game, you're gonna love it, Oh, did you play Zelda? Fantastic. Did you play Hades? Oh yeah, it's amazing. Did you try Flight Sim for a bit? It's like every game experience is part of this menu we all go through of games. I call it the universal game. It's like these games are polished and everybody will basically enjoy them. Um, and it Uh, I don't think if you're by yourself, you can make a universal game.
Mhm.
And I think it's a fallacy to think you can make a universal game where you can get everybody if you make the tutorial just right, if you make the art just right, and you make the foreshadowing just right. You can make you can make Hades or something everybody loved. Some people will do that, I guess. Yeah, they're amazing. But mostly those are quite actually accomplished studios that have very sophisticated design approaches to make that happen. And that is always halfway. That's that beautiful triple indie halfway point where that magic happens. And then you need crazy people like me that go all the way in and just let's go there and assume and go fuck it. So it's a mix. It's a mix, and you suffer the pain. I have a really nice shed. This is my shed. It's in my garden, but I live a mile from the airport because that's the only place I could buy that had enough space for a shed. So I'm by no means gaming royalty in any sense, but I get by, and that's good enough. So sometimes it's a bit of a struggle, and something like Next Fest, find enough people to get the message out. For okay, get off your fucking tunnel vision and have an open mind, and you'll find something interesting here. And that works. And it's I have to be honest. I literally spent 5 to 6 months on this stupid fucking tutorial. You probably played it. Where you go, yeah, that looks like nothing, but it is actually doing already quite a bit of heavy lifting, which it never did. Uh, and it's still not great. But at some point, the guy said, "I don't want to do any more fucking tutorial. I hate it, and it's destructive to me wanting to finish the game and add all the strategic combat elements I find interesting." So it's you draw a line. You say, okay,
Mhm.
are we getting 60% of the people? Or if we warn people, hey, it's not a fucking city builder, it's not a colony sim, it's not it's experimental. Can we then get 80% of the people who enjoy experimental games? So it's a puzzle, but people.
Mhm.
I think Bulwark is getting a lot of from people who play games a lot, quite a good reception at the moment.
Mhm. And what you said about kind of like the universal game, like that's something that I've said a lot in a lot of my design piece, that it is like impossible to make that 100% everyone loves kind of game. Because
No, because those games exist. Everybody loves Mario. A fuck ton of people love The Witcher. Let's roll down a few one. People can't get enough of fucking all this anime shit. Final Fantasy, sorry, never played it, but people can't get enough of Pokemon. So, but it is, and people obsess about. I know someone who's got to tattoo his arm with Pokemon. They go, "What the fuck, man?" Some Japanese animated critters, but. So yeah, the universal game exists, and a lot of these people have the same action figures and the same, plastic wrapped cartridges in their display case. And these things do exist, but they take such a goddamn fucking effort to create that it's to try and get there is also uh, it's mind-boggling. You meet Miyamoto and you see all sketchbooks, and he's got a museum about learning. He's got amazing ideas, and he got to execute those. It's like, uh, yeah. I don't have an answer on how to achieve that. I have to do everything myself because I'm apparently not the greatest motivator to get people to do it for me. So that I think some people, some indies do that. They are great at not Ronimo, but Flambeer and Jan Willem and Rami when they were hot. They were pumping out interesting playable games that was must play indie fare. Uh, and still do and have their own art, their own efficient, super low key art style to do it. Their low key ideas, but those were fairly universal games in that sense. They weren't played by the Halo loving, but yeah, you can get quite close if that's what you want to do. I am more interested in for me I'm more to art. It sounds pretentious, but I'm by myself, so I can't help but putting my entire fucking emotional state into it. Opinions on how we should, solve our problems in the world. I need to put all of that in my games, otherwise I'll sleep horribly, and I like sleeping. So I have to put all my shit in a game, turn it into an expressive work of art, which by its very nature is inflexible and immutable. People, oh, why couldn't you have made a free panning camera for Bulwark? I don't wanna. I want you to be fixed in place because creating something is hard. I want you to, and I cannot do it because it's technically a difficult challenge when you want to also have an open world game and a 3-dimensional building game shit. So it wasn't something I could achieve, which says something about me, which makes it a very personal game just by the frustration I had to get it to work. So it's, for me, I enjoy that. And I want that. I want you, all our games are so anonymous. We all want the same. And I don't want to piss anybody off, but a lot of games which people love the most are bland as fuck. They're blended down. Look, here's your beautiful dwarf, your beautiful elf, your groggy dwarf, your wonderful pixel art world, your love stories or whatever. It's the same fair repair, and that sounds but it's very much the same because it works and we're used to that, but it's not very personable. So it's the same. We would talk about art styles in a game. As an art director will go, oh, what art style are we using for this game? Oh yeah, I saw this great shit. Look, that's Studio Ghibli. Oh yeah, let's do that. Oh, that's amazing. So I saw this low poly guy. Everything's very triangular, but we add a lot of lighting effect. Looks really good. Let's do that. I saw a great cell shading technique, and we can use it. Some guy will make some alien shit, but we'll make some fucking manga anime shit, black and white. So, and it's like you're pick and choosing the ingredient, and then it's stir and make money. Whereas I spent 12 years on my art style, just polishing it, building it up, finding how I want to do things. And yeah, it's frustrating. I can open Unreal Engine and see some trick I figured out, and they've done it better, and I should never have done it. But I did it, and it makes it personal and interesting, and makes it different. So it visually, everything, if you throw everything and you look long enough at Bulwark, it does look different. And it does look quite unique. And it has a sense of goofiness and quaintness to it, but also something that's bleak and lonely. And all those aspects are coming through because I'm not trying to mash them up to something that's palpable. I want them to, they need to be in there. That's because that's what I do it for. That is a bit of a rant. I don't know if anybody.
It's definitely a challenge, like when you're trying to introduce someone to like that new stuff. One of the things that I've been tracking with a lot of games I've been playing is the achievement rates. See how much of the audience actually gets through or even starts learning some of the aspects of games. And like the strangest thing is that even like the most highly rated games, the most polished, award-winning titles, people will quit for any reason. I was looking at stuff.
What's like 15% of games you ever get finished?
Yeah.
15% of your audience has finished the game. Usually it's 5%. Well, yeah, that's why you have a lot of. We have a lot of competition. I have a lot of unfinished games. So I well, what I do now is I beeline a game. I beelined Cyberpunk. No side quest. No fucking. Just did the main story. Did one romantic side quest. and it was a wonderful gaming experience. Nicely condensed, small. Was able to finish it. We are offering quite a lot to people. And yeah, the finish. I don't think people. You get very upset if you think about it that way. And on the other sense, I've had on the Falconeer, which filled with the entire theme about flying away on a giant bird uh, into this warm ocean, moody sky. That's we all want to escape. And then the game is about being unable to escape. You always be dragged down to the dark, deepest fucking ocean to do something seedy and dark and not be a hero. And the entire game is about that juxtaposition, about that contrast. That is the emotion of it. 90% of the people will never get that.
Yeah.
And 1% will get it, or 5% will get it, and then 5 will come on Discord and say, "Hey, man, I looked you up, and then I saw you talking about ADD or mental health and shit, and I played your game. I was just fucking feeling it." And you have this wonderful discussion about poetry, art, and that they're trying to paint or whatever. And that is one person, and that'll happen to me regularly. I've had dozens of those conversations, but I haven't had 100,000 of them. Enough to pay for my game. But those dozens of conversations to me are more meaningful than doing that for 1 million, because you can't do that to 1 million. You can give a little bit to everybody. It's like you're subdividing it. So that is, not everybody will get that. So what? That is with all art. It is for the people that you synchronize with, that vibrate at the same speed you're at. When they're sort of, when you watch worker art or an animation, and it's personal, and it's you're in there and you're sort of feeling what's trying to be expressed about a time frame or a situation or an emotion, and you get a sense of what's happening, and you start to transport that. What would I do? Or that reflects on, oh my god, I lost someone that way and stuff, and you're crying and you're sort of vibrating. You're on the same level as the movie or the music. You're totally in the music, and the music is about you. And there's actually two people in it. It's the artist that created it, and it's you, and you're both fucking syncing as human beings. And I think that is games are inherently about sedating people and take escapism. And that's not escapism. That's pretty hard work. That's art is work, and you need to be able to connect. But it is fascinating, and it's not something I can stop doing or stop wanting to do or limit. It just fucking happens. And the same with Bulwark. Of course, I need more money. We're going to run out of money, man. I've got 3 kids. Oh, city builders are hot. Let's build city builders. I set out. Let's make the most commercial fucking city builder. I've got this great art style. Let's make just a simple fucking city builder, and it'll sell tons. And I'm incapable of doing it. Honestly, I tried, but it's so fucking boring, and it's not interesting that I start working, and everything I come out is just me figuring out, okay, that I can put people in the harbor, and they'll have different ships. And then if you get too many pirates in your settlement, one gets angry and won't sail back and forth. That'd be cool. It's completely weird, and it's completely confusing. But it's also, I gotta do it. I know what a good city builder looks like. I've played these games. I know what a conventional interface looks like. I do understand. I just don't want to do it. I can't get myself to do it. It's impossible. And that's frustrating itself. It's going,
And like part of that problem is that the bar has been raised so high on some of these genres that
sure.
Right now, I've played 10 to 15 different shooters over this past year alone. And this kind of really blew up thanks to the likes of Doom and Dusk and Ultra Kill. But the problem is, you think that, it means that the shooter genre is, alive and kicking and you should make one. The problem is, you need to make one that's going to compete with those games. And
so that is a fallacy. You can't, by statistical wide margins.
Mm-hmm.
There's now one that has 265 players that's beating them. 1 in 12 years. That's this is going to beat 1. So statistically, you can't beat fucking EA or anyone who's at the top of their game. You can't beat Age of Wonders.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. You know, I played a Master of Magic remake, and it doesn't even come close. You can't beat them because they're at the top of their game, and you need 20 years to learn what you're doing to beat them. So it's the fallacy that a lot of indies have. Okay, so I need to beat it. No, you need to run the fuck away and find some, virgin ground and do something weird and original where you can be the first one. So you got an advantage, and I'm making the, open world fucking kit bash chaotic builder, whatever the fuck it is. I don't think it's been done in this way before with a weird resource system. And it might take me, not that I'm going to do that because I won't be the sequel guy, but it might spawn a genre and someone will figure out how to do it in a way that everybody loves it. Because of course someone will, who has the meaning and wants to make a lot of money, whatever, if this is popular. But I'll be the guy, hey, then came the crazy guy with the crazy game and it was flawed and shit, but it was so fucking full of original ideas. And it's fed. I'd love to be that, and I know it sounds arrogant because it might not happen, but at least I am confident that what I'm doing is authentically original. It's coming from an original place and it's not compromised. That for me it's the only survivable space.
Yeah, and speaking about being like inspired by some of these games, a question came in earlier. Malwinius asked, I think this was regarding the first Falconeer. Was there any inspiration from the Magic Carpet games or Dragon Strike with it?
So I am of that generation. I'm 46-year-old, Amiga style, Atari ST. I think Magic Carpet was Atari ST. I played it on an Amiga 900, I think, or 600. I not consciously, but if you because I like a lot of mist and a lot of fog, and I like there's definitely visually, if you put it next together, there is something there, and there's even something in the weird, slightly Eastern architecture occasionally. I am of that age, so definitely, but also not consciously, because Magic Carpet was never my favorite game of that era. But definitely there is many design sensibilities which just click for me and which are easy for me, including making super foggy stuff, which is, people go, oh, that's Magic Carpet, which I think is nice. Dragon Strike, I didn't play. I did look it up because people say that quite often. I'm much more Crimson Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe, which I think was a little bit later, and TIE Fighter. So I'd say the Falconeer is more TIE Fighter with giant birds. But I played a lot of TSR Gold Box, I think they're called, RPGs. So Dungeons and Dragons Gold Box games back in the day, which is that same series as Dragon Strike, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a Gold Box TSR strategic simulations D&D title. So I have a lot of that aesthetic in me, even though I don't tabletop or anything. But that's definitely my roots. So there's about to be some of that generation in there.
Mm-hmm.
Hope that's the question.
All right. And as we've been talking about, like, kind of like the inspiration and finding like that virgin ground, like another really good example of this is the whole Vampire Survivor like, and this is something that we've been we've been having like this ongoing conversation about it. Like again, like as we said at the start, like Next Fest is going on. I've played at least 5 different ones over the past 3 days. And as you said, with that fallacy of trying to like chase after what is like the new hot genre, it's very hard, I think, for a lot of developers to be able to sit down and say, how do we make this legitimately different? And as you've been talking about with the Bulwark, like one of the things you've been trying to do is just say, screw what will be considered contemporary, screw what would be like, like the safest way of building this.
It's the thing with being creative. Yeah, I don't want to have a false. I think I've got my creativity nicely down. Is about not giving a fuck. It is about accepting that it's around you, that you can pull it out, and it's mostly about. Okay, so that sounds really weird, but when you're a young designer, you just want to succeed, at everything. So you look at to the people who are succeeding, and you want to match that. You want to match your talent. You're the cocky young dog. Um, but you're actually a very insecure person, because most creative people are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be creative. They have this need to let them be seen, basically, just like artists or any creative. So you've got these massive insecurities. The internal critic, most you're not good enough. The how do you call it? Imposter syndrome, all that shit. And what this does is, when you have an interesting idea, you first start to criticize it. And there's this bullshit around brainstorming. It's a different discussion about criticizing and brainstorming. That you shouldn't criticize, but criticizing, great, because it helps you work. But if you're pulling your ideas down and it's stopping you from exploring an idea, when it's just in a conceptual phase, when it's just a brain fart, because that would never work, then you're blocking your creativity. And the rest of your life, once you've realized that, is about unblocking your creativity. About saying, I can't do this, or this won't ever work. So what if it does work? How does that look for? And you're just constantly taking the ideas and running with it. And the thing becomes killing your darlings isn't, everything is bad, all my shit sucks, I need to, be critical of myself. No, it's because you're running with everything, that you're mentally building all these ideas in your head, that you have to cut off what's not working.
Yep.
But you have to get all those little engines running. So you have to keep drawing, creating, being doing the work, so you can see what works, and learn. It's always an offer. The universe is fantastic, and there's always something new that's interesting. You just have to filter it out and see what that's interesting. Okay, that's the interesting one. Of the 20 little fucking monsters I just let loose in my mind, that's the interesting one. Let's follow that one. It's don't make what you love, because that's where we start off. I love Warhammer. I love Warhammer. Let me make Warhammer. That will be the best thing. I love making Space Marines. And honestly, that is this. You have to kill that inside of you to progress. Otherwise, you'll be stuck feeding your own mind, and you're not stepping beyond your own boundaries. But creativity it's not in here. It's just beyond visual range what's coming in. So if you're always stuck with Warhammer or whatever, and that's what I see in our current crop of creators. We're all stuck with Studio Ghibli. I love Studio Ghibli, but can we shut the fuck up with trying to recreate that every fucking time? Can we stop recreating the same fucking anime? Can we recreate putting children in Asian children, girls in nurses' outfits or schoolgirl outfits and all that shit? It's distasteful. But or doing cutesy Japanese monsters. It is a lot of the same stuff. And there's everything, and I also everything you really like is because you like it because it's slightly different and it's slightly new. The first time we saw The Witcher, we liked it, or I liked it, because the medieval stuff was so fucking hardcore medieval, Middle Europe medieval, and not English American medieval. All their designs were Czech, Polish, localized stuff, and it was fascinating because of it. For me that was huge. And they pick anything that's truly, the first time you see Pokemon, the first time you see that, the first time of something is the one that sets you ablaze. And then you go try and recreate that buzz. That's the first time you played Civilization was, and every game after you're just trying to, you're a drug addict chasing the same high. So it's not super difficult. There's just these things. It's just a creative hygiene in a sense. And I'm always afraid I lose it. Sounds really confident right now, but I'm always anxious about, losing that ability, or I'll get into deep depressions like everybody. Well, not like everybody, but lots of creative people. And then I'm afraid I can't create anything again, and it'll drive me deeper down and stuff. And then I'll get so frustrated I'll make something. Oh, this is actually pretty nice. And yeah, it looks a good idea, and I got running again. And it's also finding the confidence that if you're down, don't worry, writer's block, it'll come back. You'll sit down. It's also just a skill, just a thing you've trained, and then and it's a confidence that you can be original, and it's not when someone who makes a body cam game that looks photorealistic and looks quite kind of interesting. Oh, we're gonna do that. And now there's 5 body cam games. It is sort of funny how people always, that's rushing after, and it's with AI. It's going to be. I go around the world saying it's going to be even worse because you can just press a button and copy something, or come close, or that'll be the cell. Let's put it that. I can copy that and it'll be just as good. No, you're copying something. Thus, it is not interesting. Thus, it won't be the original. Thus, you won't truly understand what you're making, because the guy that made it the first time did the research. He thought about body cam, all the motions, how the hands need to work, what kind of environments, and he took an asset and stuff. But it's quite intelligent in what he did, and then everybody else starts to copy him, and thus they miss the steps of doing the actual work of getting there. So their understanding is always going to be limited. And so then if you look at Vampire Survivors, which I've not played, looks fairly simple, but looks like something someone made who really understand what he's doing. And then you get 1,000 clones who didn't put in the legwork to make it, that never reached that same height, until someone does, of course. And that's going to be, how do you call it? Endemic of the future. Because you can already see it happening. That's and people, a certain amount of people will take that and enjoy that. Don't keep running after the same high. But there'll also be lots of people that see through that want something more, that are looking for an original buzz, or hopefully, or at least we should try to be there and bring that original buzz. That'll be the task.
And what you said about kind of like copying without understanding, like that is something that we have certainly seen from a lot of indie games. That if you don't understand kind of like why something works or why something doesn't work, it just ends up kind of feeling hollow as an experience. Like I have played several hundred at this point platformers from indie developers, and you can always kind of tell, like in the back of your mind, the difference between someone who just kind of threw things together and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't work, versus someone who understood why something doesn't work or why it did work, and try and make that experience feel cohesive.
Yeah, it's and it is literally. We'll do a little AI to wind down, but a nice AI. It is literally why I don't dislike AI. It's amazing, interesting tech, but the vibe around this, you can do this, but you're actually pressing. When I say when I go into Midjourney and I prompt lone warrior in the style of this and that, in the backdrop a Japanese castle and a moody sunset. You're doing and in Discord when it was the beta, you could see everybody doing it. As cliche as fuck, man. Roman soldiers in the future. Ooh, super original. I had a lot of how old are you? That AI is going to bring a lot of that. Whereas if you try to draw that, or you try to create that, or tell an actual story about Romans in the future, you're going to have to spend a lot of time researching to make it interesting. You're going to spend hours on it, or you used to. Before you used to spend hours on it. And those hours teach you what is good about it. You go past this König, whatever thing, where we don't actually understand if something good until you're reasonably expert at something. When you're just pressing Midjourney, you don't know why a drawing is good. And so I said everybody can sense a hit when you listen to music, and you on your favorite album. You say, well, if I were a producer, I would have known that those tracks would be the ones to score, because those are obviously the best fucking tracks of the Black Album, for fuck's sake. So everybody can recognize quality, but to shape quality, and push it, because that track did not exist.
Yep.
It literally did this. So it wasn't someone said, "Oh, this is great, guys, print this." No, as a producer, sit there. Okay, we've got something. Let's add this. Let's polish it. Bring that in. Doing their craft, putting in the work, understanding what the song needed, and then it became something where everybody went, "Wow, this is great." But it's going, "Oh, this is great," and looking at Midjourney, "Wow, that's a great image," is not the criterion of creation. You're actually, and you haven't learned about what you're doing, and thus you're missing out on a creative process, and you're missing out on an actual creative experience, which is ethically weird because you're missing out the most beautiful thing on earth. Why would you ever outsource that, which gives you great joy? And now you're getting, if you've never drawn and had that session, I spent fucking 5 days on this drawing and it's amazing, or I spent a year on this book and it's fantastic, or in my case 3 years on the book and it's done and it's pretty cool. And so, here's a button, I've made it, and it's just as cool. You've just missed out on the human experience. It's your loss. But you just don't know it because you think the product is the end result. No, that is your loss. That is your little bit of humanity you're outsourcing to fucking some corporation, and they'll give you a little 5-minute dopamine rush. But it is your loss because you haven't learned how to make it really. And like people, I don't know why we're in an AI rant again, but let's cut it out. But yeah, you sort of get what I mean.
Mm-hmm. And as a quick time check, we are about an hour and 12 in. I think we'll wrap things up in like the next 15, 20 minutes if that works for you.
If we can wrap it up because the lights are out and I'm afraid the kids are going to come down through the garden. They always tend to go wandering around midnight, which is not right now. So yeah, we can slowly wrap it up. I see someone bought the Falconeer, so cheers for that. I need that.
Yep, I do have just a few more general questions about the Bulwark, and then we'll kind of wrap things up for tonight.
So, play it with a controller, though. Sorry. For that one person watching, play it with a controller.
All right. One thing I want to ask you about was you mentioned this earlier, and it's on the store page as well, that you have what's called an evolving demo for the Bulwark. What, for people watching us live record right now, what does that mean in terms of developing the game?
Well, so for me, it's a mental crutch. So the hardest thing about any game is the moment you deliver it and people can get an opinion. And I'm not the person who not read. Oh, I'm not reading the review. I read every fucking review. And so there is there's where the rubber hits the road and people really get to spout their opinion. And with the Falconeer, I made some mistakes. It takes too long to start up. I released the version I fixed later was too difficult. It's not difficult now. It's very old-fashioned. It's like a stick flyer. It's not a mouse flyer. It's in there, but people don't like stick flyers anymore because they like how Battlefield does it, where you can fly the F-18 with your mouse, and that's not how everybody flies their airplanes. That's all fine and dandy, but those are mistakes, or they're not mistakes, but those are emotional hits for me. So I thought, well, okay, this time around, I'm going to release it early, get through the hard part, figuring out what everybody's true opinion is about the game. And I'll spend some time polishing it up and fixing some of the things which I find, which are within my capacity that don't, detract from the creative vision, but can make it easier for people to enjoy. Because I also want to make money and a living, and I don't want to have frustrated people. So that's the evolving demo is for me to get piecemeal, bit by bit feedback instead of getting it in one giant bucket of shit being poured out for me. I put it a bit harshly, but then the life is hard. So it's and I enjoy interaction because I'm always alone. So I enjoy when people. I am combative. Not in a negative way. I won't troll you. So when someone comes up, I said, "Oh, I rage quit this in 4 minutes." I'll go in. Why? What did you do? Was it something I can fix? And sometimes I'll fix it the same evening, update a patch. Can you try this? Because this annoyed you, and I changed it or I added a setting for you. And I'll go and I'll try it. And sometimes it won't work, of course. And sometimes go, oh, it's actually a little better. And one guy came back which on the Discord talking about it. And at some point at night, he was building literally to the moon in the game. And he said, I'm going to hit the skybox. He spent 4 hours live on Discord uploading screenshots, which was a guy who was saying, I don't like this game. This is why I don't like it 4 hours ago. I enjoy that a lot. I also enjoy people and just enjoying the game. There's a lot of people having fun with the game. It's not a horrible game, but I don't think it's actually quite a enjoyable unique experience that needs to grow a lot. So and you know, doing that bit by bit. I used to do a lot of modding back in the day for Skyrim, quite a few popular mods, and I enjoyed that. People coming in saying, "Oh, can you make this? Can you make that?" Of course, that's enjoyable because that's part of the creative act. You have an interaction with your audience. So that's what the evolving demo is. It's just a way for me to slowly evolve the thing, get feedback, make it better, also get a sense if it's going to be successful or not, and then release it. You know, and it won't be such a shock to everybody. So that's where it's now. And I've had a bit of bad luck this year. So my dad passed away, and it's in the midst of the evolving demo, and at this time after Next Fest, which was a bit of a slog, and we had some troubles with the live stream. I was at the Mix in LA that didn't go. That got cancelled. So I'm from Amsterdam. I've sat 13 hours in the airplane, flew to LA to be in the Mix, and the police come in with the fire department, said this place is closed. There's no showcase. So I had a bit of bad luck. So it might be that I'm going to close off the evolving demo for the summer, where I actually have a holiday and reboot myself. That's an exclusive. So it's not a permanent thing. So at some point it's going to go away, and I need to have some peace and quiet to finish the game. And then there'll be another, but then I'll open it back up for people to come in and test those new areas. But so it's just a thing to play with. It's not really a successful marketing tool in itself, but it's just an honest approach that if you're by yourself and you do everything in launch or even in early access, you're going to get everything at once. So, and you can't handle it. So that's what the evolving demo is.
All right. Sounds good. And I guess this is a question that I'm sure people have asked you. Have you given any thought to like what you'll do next after the Bulwark is done?
I have two ideas. So one is a sequel to the Falconeer with battle, where I'm just going to pitch it, which is part air combat game, part city builder, but in a desert world with infinite amounts of terrain. So it's an abandoned world where there's just the wrecks of society in these mesas, and they're all covered in train tracks, and there's all these abandoned steam engines, and all these factions from the Ursi world travel there through. Yeah, that's actually in the Falconeer. There's a Stargate. They find all this, they poop it up, they've got steam tech, and suddenly you've got this sort of pioneering steam train on giant gantries with guns on them and giant bird riders flying next to it. So, and then you set up a new world where you might be doing some city building. So that'll be the Falconeer 2, which is way too ambitious for myself. And I want to learn how to do personal storytelling. So having another character there, seeing their face up close, and doing dialogue and adventure style stuff. So actually, the realistic next game would be a very slow sailboat game, or actually, I've been thinking about in Dutch we'd call it like a pilot, I guess. So someone, if you're especially in the past with sailing boats. So imagine you're a guy in charge of a little tugboat, and your job is to take ships from the ocean where they're for anchor into the narrow canals or delta up into the harbor of the city, because you know all the waterways and so on. So it's like a pilot. When your little tugboat, take this big battleship and you sail it up to the Imperial Harbor. I like you to be the tugboat captain, and you're tugging these big sail and trading ships up the river in the past of the world of the Falconeer, when everything was green and lovely, and it's this really chill tugboating game. But it's also a game where you get a sense of an oncoming conflict and a war, and you get to make choices because you're in a position where you can make small choices with these ships, put them in late, or small rebellions as a tugboat captain, and that'll be the story. So and you have people on your boat to talk to. So that's the other idea. Going with ancient waves is like a tugboat. It's not a simulator. It's a little tugboat adventure, and small stories of rebellion in a fantasy world. I know.
All right. And I guess I'm sure one question people watching will probably wonder, like, how long do you see like the Bulwark going to be in development? Like, do you have any idea about a release date or anything like that?
Next year. So there's some delays because I've been, and I want to add quite a lot of strategy stuff, and the open world's quite empty at the moment when you play it. There's just hints of all the content I want to add. So it all takes 6 months to add that. And then there's I spent a year a year and a half of doing DLC updates, even a VR version of the Falconeer, like a Linux version and stuff like that. So I'll be in the the Bulwark universe for I think the next 2 years, just doing that.
All right. So I think with that, we can wrap things up. It's been a very interesting conversation, and I'm going to try and get some hands or get some more time on the Bulwark, maybe do a little stream of it. So I'll let you know if I get a chance, and you can watch me build things in all kinds of places too.
Cool. Yeah, you can always message me if you need help. But it's mostly about in Bulwark. It's okay. You've built something, and there's all these hidden stuffs. You upgrade something to stone, and then you can make stone walkways. What happens if you intersect them? What if you draw them over water? What if you draw them high or low? What if you build from upper floors and try to connect towers between them? What if you do it a certain distance and then you might get a city? So it's about sort of really thinking, okay, there's more to this building than I'm seeing initially, and having fun figuring that out. That's just a hint.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have anything else regarding the Bulwark from a design standpoint? Any other aspects of it that we didn't touch on that you'd like to bring up?
Oh, plenty. If you like, I'll come back. There's, the art has no textures. There's, I do weird things in my design processes, like reintegrating experiments. I love doing experiments, and then I'll make some weird shit. Like I came up with all the sea and the sailing boats, because I spend a week making all the sail correct so that it tacks and it's full wind and half wind, just with a shader, because I like doing that. And I went, okay, now I need sailing boats in the shit because I just made this. So I have an entire process of reintegrating. There's lots of stuff to talk about. If you ever want to, give me a call.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, we can certainly have you back on for a chat later on. But I think with that, Thomas, it was great hanging out with you tonight, or at least my evening. I know it's late.
Fire back there, and I was going, "What's going on there?" But it's actually some bubble wrap just reflecting off the light.
All right, but do you have anything you'd like to say to any fans watching in order to take us out for tonight?
Well, try out my games, have fun with all the games, and Jesus, don't believe anything I say. Just play the game and draw your own conclusions, if it's any good or if there's any trueness to what I'm saying. Find your own way.
All right. I think with that, we'll wrap things up. So, for you, regarding any kind of social media, backlinks, places people can find you, anything?
At the moment, still, until dear old Musk gets beaten to a pulp by the other asshole of our world, I'm still on Twitter, ashamedly, at Falconeer Dev. I do respond. My DMs are open if you're an indie dev or you want help. I've got a lot of people, for some reason, that want me to look at their pitch decks and get them feedback. I do that. Don't take any money for it. It's just for I am always alone, so I'm always up for a good conversation or a chat.
All right. So, with that said, for everyone watching this live or recorded, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out the Bulwark or Falconeer Chronicles Bulwark down below. I'll include links to that. If you are a developer watching who would like me to take a look at their game or like to come on and chat about it, please reach out. I'm always looking for guests. Again, for my YouTube overlords, do all the YouTubing algorithmic stuff people tell you to do, be sure to visit my Discord and Patreon as well. So, Thomas, again, it was a pleasure hanging out with you this evening. Best of luck with the Bulwark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, with that said, everyone, for those of you watching this live, I'll be back for some more indie games later tonight for Next Fest coverage. Check out all the videos, all the games, all that great stuff. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until our next chat, have a great night.